So, seriously, what is the multiverse? It's not Spider-Man, it's not Doctor Strange. Yes, Kate. Is it Katie or Kate? Kate. Sorry, I've been calling you Katie. All right, we'll call you Kate from now on.
It's just the idea that there's like alternate universes, like there could be a universe that's almost the exact copy of this one somewhere else, but something is slightly tweaked, and so like just the thought of like what could change if you tweak one little thing in another universe.
Okay, so it's the idea that there's other, well, so, okay, let me ask this question. What's the universe? Because to have multi, you got to figure out what one is. Colby.
The universe is a place in which we live.
Yes. So by definition, the multiverse is a place where we don't live?
Yeah.
Well, yes and no.
No, not true.
So hold on, we got a no here and then a Seth. Why? So yes and no. Why yes, why no?
We do kind of live in it, but we also live in one universe, if it's a thing. And
Okay.
all time is one wonder.
Okay, all right. Seth, you say no. Why is that?
Because then you're going to say that different planets are different universes.
Well, no, it's a good question. It's like, we don't live in the Andromeda galaxy, but I would consider that part of our universe, correct?
Well, yeah.
So what is the multiverse? And is it a problem for Christianity?
Yes. A bunch of different universes, each one having some sort of different orientation.
Okay, so yeah, you're correct, but we're back to, so what's a universe then? So I did when I was first studying the multiverse and thinking about it, I did what any good person does and goes out and types it into Google, what is the multiverse? And this was my favorite answer. Sorry. It's a plot device for lazy writers, yes. I don't have any artistic ability in terms of writing, but it is funny how many movies solve problems with the multiverse at this point. This may date me back, but there was a movie called Source Code with Jake Gyllenhaal in it.
Yeah. It's a good one.
They solved the problem with the multiverse in there. So I was like, go back, rewatch it.
Okay.
And is the Matrix? That's a good question. Sorry, I heard your question.
I said that right.
The Matrix, I do not think, is a multiverse. That is a simulated reality as opposed to an actual reality is what we're talking about here. Although it's related, so I'm not going to say, it's not entirely indistinct. What's that? Well, okay.
Dreams, not realities, though.
So you've got this problem. We keep coming back to this question, what is a universe? And we don't have a good definition for it. And that was originally what I recognized. It's like, okay, I got to come up, if I'm going to talk about the multiverse, one, I got to figure out what in the world a universe is. How could I define it? Nick?
And just, so if there is a multiverse, what's the name for everything then? So if there's multiple universes, what's the name for like
The collection of all the universes.
the collection of all the universes? It'll just be
So my name for it is the entire physical realm. But that's just a new word for what we used to call the universe. The universe used to be the entire physical realm. And then we realized, wait a second, maybe there's more to stuff than just the universe. And so we talked about the multiverse. And so, some of this is definitions, but the ideas are interesting. So I thought it's good to have a good way to talk about this. And so let's start off talking about let's define what a universe is first. So let's start out here. We always like to have good pop quizzes. Who knows what this is? The moon. What is interesting about the moon? Give me one interesting fact about the moon, Colby.
It's not made of cheese.
It is not made of cheese, although the sound the velocity of propagation through it is very similar to most types of cheese. That's an odd fact that really nobody wants to know. Yes, Tricia. It does reflect the light of the sun. Kate. There's oceans. What do you mean by oceans?
Like the dark spots are like frozen oceans, right?
No, they're not. They're just, there is very little water on the moon. No, that's good. That means we've learned something today. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. No, there are not. It's The dark spots are rocks that don't reflect light as well as the light spots. Now, in fairness, it's like there's the Sea of Tranquility and the Sea of this, so we call them seas, but they're not actually seas. So.
The dark spots are water.
No, they are not. Sorry. Huh? No, because that's probably an impact point. So you had a question over here. What's on the dark side? A whole lot more of this stuff. We just don't ever get to see it. There is no Transformers over there. Sorry to burst your bubble. But yes, okay, one last thing, Lexi. What's that? It is. Even though it is much smaller than the sun, it has a more dominant impact on the tides. Now, the interesting thing to me about the moon is that it is 200,000 miles away. Does 200,000 miles bring to mind any interesting number or close to any interesting number? Who? What is the speed of light? It's 186,000 miles per second. So this is 200,000 miles away. So how long does it take light to get from the moon to us? Slightly longer than a second. You're confusing your bodies. That's the sun. 200,000 miles away, speed of light is about 200,000 miles per second. Takes light 1 second to get to it. So when we're looking at the moon, are we looking at the moon right now? When are we looking at the moon? 1 second ago. Okay, so that's a cool fact. Let's move that off and keep track that we're looking at the moon as it looked 1 second ago. What's this object?
Galaxy.
Yes, it is a galaxy. Anybody know which one? It is the Andromeda Galaxy. You are correct. It is. If we were in the Andromeda Galaxy looking at the Milky Way, it'd look a lot like this. They're very sister galaxies. Anybody know how long it takes light to get from the Andromeda Galaxy to the Earth?
100 years.
Keep going. How many? What's a few? 2.5?
2.5.
Yes, it is 2.5. Great job, Seth. Great job, Seth. So if it takes light 2.5 million years to get from the Andromeda Galaxy to us, are we seeing the Andromeda Galaxy as it looks today? No. When are we looking at it? As it looked 2.5 million years ago. That's kind of an interesting fact. Let's put that off to the side. Almost 2 million. Roughly 2 million. It's actually 2.5. Anybody know what this is?
Stars.
Stars? Galaxies? Wow. All right.
Galaxy.
This is actually the, what's that?
It's like stars and galaxies and like things like the Milky Way.
Mostly stars, mostly galaxies. What do you think?
Galaxies.
Mostly galaxies. That's interesting. It's called the Hubble Ultra Deep Field. And there are 10,000 objects in this image, 5 of which are stars. Let's see here. There is a star right there. There is a star right down here. Star right there, star right there, star right there. Everything else is a galaxy.
Those are big stars.
They're not so much that they're big, it's that the light is so much that it bleeds over into other pixels. So these, you notice these little crosshatches. That's how you find the stars, because the light's bleeding out. Whereas with the galaxies, those are actual images of what the galaxies look like. Now, what's some of these galaxies, we're seeing the light the light from these galaxies takes anywhere from 8, 9 to 10 billion years to get from that galaxy to the Earth, which means we're seeing, like, you know, this little dim red one there, those are the types of galaxies that would be doing that. We're seeing these galaxies as they appeared 8, 9, 10 billion years ago, excuse me. Anyone know how old the universe is?
14.6.
100 billion.
12 billion.
Average year twos.
400.
It's 13 point something billion. We're just going to call it 14 billion. So this is the cosmic microwave background radiation, or rather the cosmic microwave background radiation when you subtract off the average value and do a bunch of things so that you can see the fluctuations, because these fluctuations are what cause galaxies to grow. It's really kind of cool. But this is light that we're seeing from 400,000 years after the creation event. And what you see is that where this was the 200,000 miles away, so it took 1 second, this is 2.5 million light years away, or 2.5 million light years away, so it takes 2.5 million years to get to us. These are much longer, so it takes 12 billion years to get to us. This takes almost 14 billion years to get to us. What happens if we try and go farther? Well, you could go further away, but light from those objects would not have had time to get all the way to the Earth. So now, hey, I've got a great way of defining the universe. It's everything where light could get from there to the Earth. And it's because the universe is 14 billion years old, and the speed of light has a maximum value, I can put a well-defined distance out there. It says anything beyond that is no longer part of our universe, it's part of something else. Our universe is defined by being the maximum distance you can be that would allow light to get to the Earth. Yes?
Does that mean our universe will grow?
It will slowly over time. Very slowly. Can light not travel infinitely? What do you mean?
You said like light can only reach us, that's the edge of the universe.
So light travels at 186,000 miles per second. The universe is only 14 billion years old, so that's a maximum distance that light could travel. Light's going to continue to travel, but until the universe gets older, we can't see anything from any further away. So now yeah.
Does that mean it's possible that there's more like planets and galaxies outside of the view of light? Or is that impossible?
I think that's exactly what it means, is that there's stuff beyond what we can see. So now you know why we're talking about a multiverse, because I'm going to define a universe as the maximum extent of what we can see. The multiverse is anything beyond that. Now, there's different ways you can have anything beyond that. So now, this picture that I showed earlier today, where the universe poofs into existence, everything's there, we can make measurements of how far away things are. We can't because we can't actually let time, but we can measure how fast things are moving away from us. We can make these measurements, and if we zoom out farther, we get a picture of more and more stuff. And if we zoom out, if we could do this, and we can't, we can see that there's an observable universe, which is the maximum distance something could be where light could get to the Earth, but there's more stuff out there. In fact, if we were to be instantaneously transported out to the edge of the observable universe, we would see largely the same type of universe. That's cool, isn't it? Now you can understand why that little picture where it pops into existence and the universe is this ball that grows, why it's just not the right way to look at it. Because that has this picture that everything that exists is within our ability to see. But I can tell you the way the best scientific understanding we have of the universe is that there's a range of stuff that we can see, and then there's stuff beyond that.
Why would that be considered in our universe though? If we had enough time to get out there, you could still continue one straight path and get to that point.
Yes, it is, but I need some way of saying, hey, what's a well-defined way of saying this is a universe? And you're free to define it differently. I'm telling you my definition. Okay? Yes, Maddie.
So if the universe is expanding,
Yes.
does that mean there'll be a point where our multiverse grows and our universe shrinks because we can see less?
Well, so what's going to happen is this circle, it's actually a sphere, is going to slowly grow over time.
It's grows so we can still see as it grows.
Yes, so for a while, and this is different cool fact that's unrelated to the multiverse, is that over time, this bubble grows larger and larger, so more stuff will come into our observable universe for a while. But about 30 years ago, scientists recognized that the expansion is actually accelerating. It's getting faster. So for a while, our bubble will get bigger and more stuff will be in there. But after a little bit longer, the stuff is going to accelerate out, and the stuff that we can see is actually going to move outside what we can see. God creates incredible stuff, doesn't he? So, we now have a definition of universe. We just watched that. Let's go on to the next one here. So if we've got a definition of our universe, now we can talk about what is a multiverse. We can have, so if we take our observable universe, it's just part of what's in there. There are other observable universes, more of the same stuff. That's interesting. I find this a very non-controversial idea. This almost certainly is true of the physical realm. A lot of times, though, when people are talking about multiverses, they're not just talking about more of the same stuff out there. They're talking about other realms where the laws of physics might look different. The speed of light might be greater. Different number of dimensions. Forces might look different. This is what most people are talking about when they're talking about the multiverse. So we all have a clear definition there? Yes, Nick.
Does that mean for the definition that you had, the current multiverse might eventually become our just universe in general because the light reached those areas?
Because it's expanding, so we're not even able to see that, because then the light that we can see is just going to expand further. So unless we get really, really good at science, and we can all of a sudden see really far away really fast? No.
So what's going to happen in our what's going to happen in our observable universe is that the size of the observable universe will grow, but because the expansion of space is going to increase, the amount of stuff in our observable universe will shrink. Eventually, it will, and I'm talking eventually is like 1 trillion years from now. So to an astronomer, that's not too long. To anybody else, that's a really long time. It will get down to where we live in a cluster of galaxies, a supercluster of galaxies. Anything that's not in that supercluster of galaxies will end up being spread away from us and we will never see it. 1 trillion years from now, the universe is going to get really small in terms of what there is to look at. Yes, Lexi.
So, if the stuff we can see that's 14 billion light years away, is that how old that stuff is?
So I'm going to be real careful here. The light from that stuff has been traveling towards us for 13 to 14 billion years. We're seeing it as it looked 14 billion years ago.
It could be much older.
Well, it's 14 billion years old now, just like we are. I mean, our stuff is, we're just seeing it as it looked in the past.
So we have no clue how old things are.
We don't have any idea what it looks like today.
We also don't know how old it was before we saw it.
Well, no, because we know how far away it is, so we know how old it was when we were seeing it, so we can tell you, we can tell what it looked like at that time. So we can specify what time it was and what it looked like then.
So what's the oldest thing we can see?
The oldest thing we can see is this stuff, the cosmic microwave background radiation.
How was that?
That was emitted 400,000 years after the universe was born.
We don't know how far back that is.
Yes, it's 13.8 billion years minus 400,000.
So that's how old we think the world is.
We think the universe is 13.8 billion years old. This light was emitted when the universe was 400,000 years old, and that's the most distant light we will ever be able to see. Might be able to see back 0 to 400,000, we might be able to get in there with gravitational waves, but we're not going to do it with light waves, electromagnetic radiation. So do we all have a good idea, or at least a working knowledge of what the multiverse is at this point? You don't know. Still thinking about it, huh, Lauren? It's just simply this idea that there is a maximum distance that stuff can be where light can get to the Earth. The multiverse is anything beyond that. Now, there's different types of multiverses. Just a second. We can have where we just get away and it's more of the same stuff, or it could be other regions where things look really, really different from our universe. Yes?
So, do you think our universe could be older than the 14 billion years because we can't see outside of the observable?
No. Everywhere in so if you go to this, everything in here is going to be 14 billion years old.
Every circle is 14 billion.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Now, time may pass differently over here, but everywhere in this one, it's going to be 14 billion years old.
All this stuff is farthest away from us.
Well, the further away you look, the further back in time you're seeing. So everything today is the same age. We're just seeing it when it was younger.
So does any planets or stars or whatever last, how long, what's the longest that they last?
There are stars that will last for 80 billion years.
So there are some things that are still
Yeah.
there.
And there are lots of things that have disappeared. But yeah, there are stars that have left. So in those images of those galaxies, some of those stars will still be around. Yes, Sean.
Can you get outside of the observable universe theoretically?
So it is impossible to move faster than the speed of light through space. That is a hard limit. We don't know how to do that. So that's the maximum speed we can move. So considering that the observable universe is growing at the speed of light, if we start traveling at the speed of light, we're just going to be chasing, it's going to be the same all the way through, right?
Why is there no possible way to go faster?
Because that's the way God made the universe. No, it really does boil down to that, is there is a hard limit that the speed of light is the fastest you can move through space. And every measurement we've said validates that that is indeed the case. Now, what we don't know, and the reason why you said is it theoretically, and so that's why I'm sitting there, do I really go into this or not? It is impossible to move through space faster than the speed of light. There is no limit on how fast space can expand. So that's why things can move outside of our, a star can be moving outside because the space is expanding such that it carries it out. So maybe Star Trek's onto something where we can warp space and travel faster. I don't think so, but I can't theoretically rule it out. So
stars are moving at the speed of light, like actually moving at the speed of light?
no, the light from the stars is moving at the speed of light.
Wait, so how is it expanding that faster?
So remember when I was talking about how we're looking at galaxies, and the further away a galaxy is, the faster it's moving away from us? Yeah. So what's happening in there, it's not that the galaxy is moving through space, it's that the space in between is expanding. So a picture that would give you an out, blow up a balloon a little bit, put a whole bunch of dots on there. Are the dots moving on the balloon? When you blow it up, do the dots move apart? That's what's happening in the universe.
It's literally making more space.
It is literally making more space. Yes. It's expanding.
I don't get that.
That's kind of the way, that's the way God made it. All right, so the whole, I'm gonna come, no, this is great. I love the questions because it's important to get a grasp. The reason why I wanted to bring this up is, okay, so we've got a definition of multiverse is just the physical realms beyond the observable universe. So we can have these different observable universes. I'm going to use Hubble volumes and bubble universes and observable universes. Those are all interchangeable terms on my slides, sorry. This is this level 1. It's just, there's more stuff, more of the same stuff out beyond what we can see. You got this level 2 where there's different universes. And again, I just don't have good terms. But this is where you've got these different bubbles out there where the laws of physics might look different. The dimensionality might be different. Speed of light might be different. Those sorts of things. There's actually another way to get a multiverse. And I'm just going to mention this for completeness. Anybody ever seen the movie Back to the Future? Yeah. Okay, I'm not that old yet. Okay, good. In Back to the Future, Marty goes back in time, changes things, and he comes back. Is he in the same universe? No. Things are different. So there's quantum mechanical events, and I'm not going to explain why, but one of the ways of looking at quantum mechanics is that when quantum events happen, there's multiverses. You're actually moving through this multiverse. And so there's just different stuff out there. I say it so that you can know about it and read about it if you want to. I'm not going to talk too much about it because the answer to that, or how you address that, is we don't really know what's going on with quantum mechanics in a way to answer this. And so I'm just going to punt on that question. And then there's a level 4. I like the terminology because it says, okay, level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. It allows you to engage it well. Level 4 is just any other way you could come up with a multiverse. That's in that category. It's mathematical stuff that's fun to play with. So the reason why we've delineated all these is now let's ask the question. Remember, what were the 2 strongest scientific arguments in support of God being who he is? What's one of them?
I had a question.
Okay, you had a different question. Yes, what's one of them? General relativity, that's related to it, but what does general relativity point to? Design. So design points to purpose. Purpose points to, what's the cool theological word? Teleology. It's a teleological argument. Purpose, design, is good. Just throwing new words at you because you're going to hear them eventually. So design, fine-tuning points to purpose. Purpose points to a creator, an intelligence, a mind behind it. What's the other scientific one? Yes? Universe had a beginning, which is, what's the cool 10-letter word for that one? There's the teleological argument and the, anybody remember it? I said it.
First letter.
C.
Cosmetology.
No, not cosmetology. Come on. It starts with C and ends with osmological. Cosmological argument, yeah. What? C-O-S-M-O-S, C-O-S-M-O, logical.
Cosmological.
Right. So now the question is, how does the multiverse impact the cosmological arguments and the teleological arguments? Well, let's kind of explore into that. So if we're going to say, all right, we want to have a multiverse, and that gets rid of the need for having a God. We now have to come up with a multiverse that is self-contained. There cannot be a beginning, because if we got a beginning, that points to a beginner again. There can't be design in it, because if the multiverse shows design, that again points to a designer. It must explain the observable universe and make testable predictions. That's not actually naturalistic. That's if you want to call it science. This is a key feature of how science works. If you want something to be scientific, it's got to make predictions and explain how the universe works. It must produce sufficient variety, because we can look and say, you know, the universe could have been different. It could have been that there were 4 dimensions instead of 3. It could have been that gravity was stronger or weaker. It could have been that the speed of light was faster or slower. It could have been. So whatever generates the multiverse must be able to produce a sufficient variety to explain all the things that we could see possibly happening. Our universe must be one of those possible outcomes. And if this is going to work, all life must be completely physical. And that's really kind of another way of stating this. But if, as Christianity says, humans are a union of physical and spiritual, that we have a physical body, but we're also a spiritual beings, that spiritual and physical are put together, if that's true, rearranging all the atoms of Jeff Zweerink, moving them somewhere else will not give you Jeff Zweerink. Because I'm a union of the physical, which is the atoms, plus the spiritual, which is something non-physical. So if that's true, the multiverse is never going to be naturalistic. But if you want to make the claim that the multiverse gets rid of the need for God, you've got to have it self-contained and all life must be completely physical. I'm not going to address this one today entirely, but I am going to go look at these two. So, in our universe, we've talked a lot about how rare or unique life is, correct? Talked about you got to have the right kind of planet, the right kinds of laws of physics. The universe has to make the stuff that's there that points to design. You got to have the right kind of planet there. The genetic code has this design. Life looks rare in the universe. If we live in a multiverse, what does the multiverse do to that? So let me ask it a different way. I have a drawer full of socks. In my drawers, there's thousands of socks and one red sock. What are the chances of drawing one red sock out if I look in one drawer? 1 in 1,000. I have 1,000 socks, there's one red sock. That's a universe. Now I'm saying we live in a multiverse. So how many drawers are there? There are lots and lots and lots of drawers. Was it hard to draw a red sock in one universe? Is it hard to draw one red sock in the multiverse? No, because every multiverse gives you a shot at it. So if I have 10,000 multiverse or 10,000 drawers, how many times am I going to draw a red sock? Roughly 10 times. Because it's 1 in 10, I've got 10,000, so I should draw 10 red socks. The multiverse makes improbable things almost inevitable.
Hang on, but
Yes?
in this multiverse, isn't it like, it's not like the multiverse we see in TV. Don't you think that each multiverse is completely different? Because it's still technically one, like,
Yes.
one continuous.
Yes, they are completely different. Yes, that is correct.
Yeah.
So what's your point?
None of them are like replicated.
Yes. That's correct.
There's still only one red sock.
Right. Well, no. There's the way people look at it is the multiverse. It allows all possibilities to happen somewhere.
Yeah, you might find like a different shade of red, but there'll be one of that red.
Yes.
There's one red sock and one green sock.
No, you are absolutely correct. But what you miss is what's true, what is demanded for us to exist. We have to live in a universe that allows us to exist, right? Where everything's just right. So there may be thousands, millions, and billions of universes where not everything works, but we're going to live in the one that has all the things that come up right. Our existence selects which part of the multiverse we're going to be in. So yes, there's a whole bunch of lifeless universes out there, but we're going to see the one that allows us to be here. Okay. So the fact that we exist means that it's not just the same probability. We are now selecting the universe that we're in because we exist. But we have to ask the question, is there other way to get life? You know, we think there's only one way to get life. I mean, naturalistically speaking. You've got to have all the elements come around. They've got to assemble somehow, make life. It evolves. That's what we think, right? But is that the only way life can happen? No. If life is purely naturalistic, purely physical, like we say, how else could we get life?
Not purely naturalistic.
No. So let me ask that. In the multiverse, if we're going to explain that and life is purely physical, are there other ways to get life? Yeah.
Can I ask, earlier you said
Sure.
that God didn't create
Go ahead.
You said God didn't create the plants.
I didn't say God didn't create them. I said he made them. So he's still responsible for them, but he just didn't create them out of nothing. Didn't create them ex nihilo. No, he's using process to bring about what he wants to happen. Not just bringing that. It's the ex nihilo part that he's not doing with plants. He's still responsible for them. That's my contention. But we're saying, if the naturalist wants to say, I've got a multiverse that doesn't have God there, they've got to account for all the different ways we have life. We're conditioned to think this is the only way life could happen naturalistically, but it turns out there's other ways to get life. You talked about the Matrix, right? So in the Matrix, they're effectively simulating life. You've never watched the movie. Well, I just told you what's happening in the Matrix. I'm sorry, I just spoiled it for you. I can tell you this. My research was to find gamma rays from objects. I can tell you I simulated far more gamma rays than I did actually seeing gamma rays. So if you can simulate life, we have to ask the question, are we really life or are we just a simulation somewhere? That's a question that arises. If life is purely physical, how do you make Jeff Zweerink? if life is purely physical, what? Computer code? Well, if I'm just purely, if life is,
Even have physical.
if I'm purely physical, I'm just an arrangement of atoms, right? So if you get all those atoms arranged properly, you've got Jeff Zweerink, right? Okay, is it not possible out in the vacuum of space, you can just, there are thermal fluctuations where things become more ordered and then dissipate. It's entirely possible that all of the atoms could just fluctuate into existence and make Jeff Zweerink out in the vacuum of space. Now we think those are just highly improbable. We can't worry about that. But but you're right. In the multiverse, anything that can happen does happen. And
We don't know.
what's that?
That's just a way of saying we don't know. Anything can happen because we don't know if it can happen.
No, what I'm saying is in the multiverse, you're saying we're explaining life because in spite of all the improbabilities, the multiverse just has enough samples that it makes it happen. Let me give you another shot at it. So, go ahead, ask your question, Sean. Okay, so I don't know how many of you play poker, but there is a hand in poker which is ace, king, queen, jack, 10 of spades. Yeah. Do you know what the probability of getting that hand is?
Really low.
1 in 2.5 million. Yes. It's 52 times 51 times 50 times 49 times 48. Yes. So it's 1 in 2.5 million. If I deal one hand out to you and you get that, what would you say?
I'm rich.
You say, wow, why did that happen? That's highly improbable. I didn't expect that. If I deal out 10 million hands, is it unusual that somebody has one? No, because the sample size is large enough that it makes the improbable thing happen.
We don't know if what we can't see is even that big.
It's a lot of speculating.
There's a little bit of speculating, but it's very informed scientific speculation because we know what produces, we have ideas of what produces the multiverse that we can measure in our universe, and those mechanisms produce a very large multiverse. Now we can say, well, I don't like that, but I'm just telling you from a scientific perspective, it's very reasonable to think this is the way it actually works. And I'm inclined to be skeptical of it in the first place, but as I've studied, I'm like, okay, that's reasonable. Brett. Okay, go ahead, Cooper.
So I had a comment. So
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes, obviously, we can only test so much in our state that we're in right
That's correct.
So that being said, obviously, we were talking about this a couple days ago. Apologies, I was at the dentist this morning, so I didn't miss
I understand.
So I feel like sometimes it gets to the point where we start to limit God and what he can do supernaturally. Because obviously when God works outside of the natural order, miraculous things happen.
Mhm.
And I feel like when we start speculating too much and using science to fit into Scripture instead of using science to back up Scripture, it gets dangerous.
Say that last part again. Sorry, I was just thinking of something else. Say that last part again.
I feel like sometimes when we speculate too deeply
Yes.
on things that we can't fully grasp,
Right?
then I feel like sometimes that when we try to mesh that then to Scripture, often we are finding the meaning we want rather than the meaning that is being.
No, I agree with you. And this I am not trying, let me clarify what I'm trying to do here. I am not trying to say, oh, the multiverse exists, this is how to do it, this is what God's doing. What I am saying is scientists who are skeptics will come in and say, you know what, all this evidence you have for God, it doesn't matter because the multiverse answers all of that. And so you're correct. I'm not coming in and saying, ooh, we need to put this into the Bible. I'm saying these are the arguments you're going to encounter from skeptics. Here's how you can respond to them. And when you respond to them, you got to go play on their turf. They're going to say, hey, we don't have a God. We don't need a God. So I'm going to say, all right, let's take what you say and ask the question, do we have a beginning in this multiverse? Do we have evidence of design? Because if we do, we're still pointing towards a God. But I'm going to do that based on what the framework they're saying to start with. is kind of like when you're a missionary in another culture, you go in and you understand their culture so that you can bring the gospel and they're going to hear it in their culture. This is a very similar approach to that. Yeah?
Wait, so do you believe in the multiverse or do you not believe in the multiverse?
If I'm a betting person, I would say the multiverse probably exists. If we end up in a single universe, I'm perfectly comfortable with that. Because at the end of the day, I think the multiverse makes far more sense in a theistic worldview than in a naturalistic worldview. But I'm indifferent. If it doesn't exist, I'm fine. If it does, I'm fine. So,
Which multiverse?
I would say a level 2. I would say a level 2, probably. We almost certainly live in a level 2 multiverse. Yeah?
So based on the method you just said to defend Scripture, when it comes to different theories of God, taking that approach is that could be fallible to then find light in defense for God. So in other words, if an atheist comes with atheistic type viewpoints, I come to that viewpoint and I say, well, look, it fits into because of X, Y, Z. I feel like sometimes we can waste a lot of time focusing on points that are not beneficial to Scripture anyway. So like another good example is if somebody comes up to me of a different religion and they're like, well, you don't understand because you're not part of this religion. Obviously, I'm not going to start following that religion and be like, oh, well, this is why
Right.
I love. I'm going to use Scripture and be like, I can defend what I believe with Scripture. It's your job to defend what you believe with the evidences you have. So I feel like when we try to cross over, it can waste a lot of time.
Yes and no. And the reason why I think this is different is because I don't think science is a language that the skeptic and the Christian are both going to speak. They both appreciate the validity of what science has to say. And so what I'm doing is saying, all right, we both say science has something to say here. Let's go in and explore what is the multiverse. Does the multiverse actually support your claim, or does it support my claim? And so that's why it's coming in and saying, all right, if I'm going to talk about the multiverse, we have to agree on what the multiverse says, and then that gives us a framework where we can talk on a common arena. But I'm still saying, I'm asking the question, does this support your way of thinking, or does it support my way of thinking? And I'm going to...
If you can't see the multiverse at all, how can it explain either way's point of view?
I can't see a black hole, but I know they exist.
That's through the rules of induction.
I'm just going to say that there's a lot of scientific evidence that points towards the existence of a multiverse. It may be wrong. I'm open to that. And I can see why you would say, well, we don't know. But I do have the capacity to go in and look.
If it's there,
Yeah?
but we can't see it, how can it explain the things we can't see?
What I would say is that I'm looking at what is it that explains what we do see in our universe, and the implications of what we do see in explaining our universe says that it exists. Now, that may sound weird, but that sort of phenomena happens routinely in science. When Einstein first proposed general relativity, somebody came along and said, wait a second, if general relativity is true, there ought to be these things called black holes. Well, by definition, you can't see a black hole. No light escapes from it. But we figured out ways of saying, wait a second, we can tell whether there's a black hole. We can make measurements and say whether there's black holes there or not. And so this sort of idea, though it may sound foreign or weird, this is kind of the way science operates.
Do you mind if I comment on that?
Go ahead.
What you might find, so that same question you asked is what people who don't believe in Jesus would ask about Jesus. And you can apply the same rules of logic, science, and Scripture to prove. So it's really, what do you derive truth from? And how do you find that? Is ultimately what
I'm trying to... So let me just park all that for a second. These are great thoughts. Hopefully this will generate some good discussion. Keep going in here. What I do want to do is make 2 points and demonstrate 2 things. That the idea behind the multiverse, whether it exists or not, a lot of scientists think it does. I'm one of those who thinks the evidence points towards its existence. The question is, does it get rid of the cosmological and teleological argument? And it's a little bit complicated, but when you start talking about the multiverse, even the multiverse exhibits design. And the explanation to get in that is going to raise a whole lot more questions than it may answer right now. What I will just say is that there are, the question is no longer are we rare, but it's are we typical in a multiverse when you're talking about life? Because instead of there being just this one naturalistic way to get life, there are many naturalistic ways to get life, and most of them are not the kind of life we think we are. Even the naturalist thinks we are. And so when you start delving into it, even the multiverse, in order to produce everything it does, in order to explain life, you still end up with a design argument. Cosmological argument, it arises out of inflation, and I haven't at all explained what inflation is. What I did mention is that there was this fellow who was prominent in introducing the theory of inflation. If inflation happened, the physical realm is much larger than the observable universe. And we have lots of evidence that points to inflation happening. And so the fact that inflation happened means that what exists is far larger than our observable universe. And when we look at what are the mechanisms that cause inflation, those produce these other multiverses. So there's a whole lot of science that says, yeah, it's reasonable to think these multiverses exist. But when we look at inflation, what ends up coming out is that our observable universe still begins at the Big Bang. But this level 2 says that the beginning of our universe is nothing unique. It's kind of like a Sunday. That's the beginning of the week, but there's nothing really that special because there's a Sunday that's going to come later, a Sunday that's going to come before. There's other Sundays throughout the time. Yeah, Trent.
What's the scripture that supports that?
That supports what?
That the multiverses were created before our universe. Didn't God create all of it under the heavens at the same time?
That's what. No, I agree. I will agree with your conclusion that yes, God is responsible for everything. But the skeptic is going to say the multiverse says, yeah, our universe has a beginning, but it's just part of this much larger thing that may have existed forever. So it's another way of saying, can we escape the beginning? The multiverse gets rid of the beginning, except that this is the fellow that was responsible, or largely responsible, for how we look at inflation. And what this says here, inflationary spacetimes are incomplete in past directions. I'll just say what that means, is that if you start running backwards, eventually you run into a boundary, and that boundary looks a lot like a beginning. So the hope was that the multiverse would get rid of the design or the fine-tuning. The multiverse would get rid of the beginning, and in reality what the multiverse does is says, no, we have design, no, we have a beginning. So even the multiverse strengthens the cosmological and teleological arguments. So I'm not going to, we talked about the fine-tuning. I'm not going to go into that a whole lot more detail. This is really where I want to get down to. If the multiverse exists, this actually aligns with what the Bible describes. I originally thought, oh, the multiverse is a problem. That can't be true for Christianity to be true. But think about it. There's this realm in which we live in. There's the spiritual realm that the angels live in, correct? So there's at least two verses. There's a new heaven and new earth where it's going to look vastly different than what it does in this universe. So the scripture actually talks in language that sounds a lot like a multiverse. So the idea that a multiverse exists that's not an unbiblical idea. I would say the Bible's actually describing, in some sense, a multiverse. We say, well, why would he have all these other universes when why would he have billions and trillions of stars and trillions of galaxies when Earth is what seems to be important? So God's economy may not match ours. And all of these things that there are these problems. So if in the multiverse, everything that happens, there's another Jeff Zweerink who gets up here and decides to tell you, oh, hey, God doesn't exist. Well, if that could happen, it's going to happen somewhere. Well, in the Christian worldview, the only reason you get Jeff Zweerink is because all the physical stuff is there, but then God puts the Spirit in me as well. So this is the only Jeff Zweerink that exists, and this is the only Maddie, and this is the only faith that exists, because God creates you body, physical and spiritual.
Yeah, but when the Bible, I just looked up New Heavens, New Earth in the Bible. It's Isaiah 65:17. See, I will create new heavens and a new earth, so former things will be remembered.
Right.
That sounds like in the future he's going to make a new heavens and a new earth. Not that they're out there already in the multiverse.
No, I agree. I'm just saying that when you look at Scripture, it's not just this one universe. There's multiple universes that God is creating. Now, it's not the same as the naturalistic multiverse, but this language is nothing new. And yes, it is in the future. It's, the heaven is not some part of this part of the multiverse that would exist here. No, it's something new creation. All I'm saying is the language of Scripture is there are many verses out there, not just this one. There's at least 3 that we know of. God may have made more. So where I thought the multiverse was a threat to Christianity, as I dug into it, I realized, you know what? No, it actually supports this cosmological and teleological argument. And Christianity kind of talks like there's a multiverse anyway. So this isn't something I needed to be afraid of. And so as I do every now and again, I'll go out and write a book about stuff. And that's what I wrote about. It's like, who's afraid of the multiverse? Originally, I thought I was. And then I realized, you know what? No. The people who need to be afraid of the multiverse are the naturalists. Because the multiverse fits far more comfortably in a Judeo-Christian theistic worldview than it does a naturalistic worldview. And in spite of all the questions and all the uncertainties and what is the multiverse, does it exist, and all those things, that's really what I want you to walk away from. The multiverse isn't a threat to Christianity. It actually fits far more comfortably in a Christian theistic worldview if that's what it turns out to be true, whether it does or not. Any thoughts, comments, or questions? We got just a couple minutes here. Yeah, we'll go with Colby here.
So I had just a quick question.
Yeah.
About the speed limit of the universe.
Okay.
The speed of light. That's what it is.
It is. I agree.
So you were saying that things, when space expanding, can travel faster than the speed of light?
The fabric of space can expand faster than the speed of light. Things cannot move through space faster than the speed of light.
Isn't that is it maxed at double the speed of light because 2 things moving in opposite directions, or no?
No, it's the fabric of space has no limit on how fast it can expand. I know that sounds weird, but that's what general relativity works out. Blake, you had a question.
Yeah, so Jacob, in the Bible, he wrestled with an angel.
Mm-hmm.
So it had to be a physical being, right, that he wrestled with. So
The being had to have the capacity to interact with the physical realm, is the way I would say it.
okay.
Angels are spiritual beings. God grants them capacity to have physical interactions.
Okay, that answers my
Okay. Yeah, go on, Nick.
So you said like the fabric of the universe, right?
The fabric of space-time is what I...
Space-time.
Right.
I've seen some models about how the space-time like affects orbits and affects like mass, basically,
Mhm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So is the fabric like legit expanding like with more and more fabric, or is it tightening like being pulled out?
Good question. The way I think about it is there's just more and more fabric. It's not an entirely answered question, scientifically speaking, but we know that the fabric is expanding or stretching. Whether that's new fabric or whether that's just the tightening of the fabric, there's reasons why you could argue either way with that. So,
Would we be able
yes,
to
Aiden.
So is the fabric expanding or is God creating?
Is the fabric expanding or is God creating? I would say God created the fabric with the capacity to expand. In my assessment, everything that happens ultimately comes back to what God did. There's nothing that happens apart from what he did. So whatever you ask me, there's going to be some language in there that ultimately ties it back to God did this, he upholds creation this way, this is why it works. So, Cooper.
Sorry,
Okay.
ultimately, I had a comment, but I wanted to not forget. Ultimately, if you are stretching something, can't you'd be able to see the results of it being tightened in our universe. Therefore, if we're not seeing that, then it would have to be being created and expanding.
Yeah.
Which is what you were saying.
It would affect orbits.
So the question is, how do you go about measuring that?
Yeah.
Because as the fabric is expanding, the wavelength of light is getting stretched out. I mean, so measuring that is a really difficult thing. If I had a ruler that said, okay, this ruler never changes and it measures the fabric of space-time, then yes. But the rulers God gives us are affected by the expansion of space as well. So I have time for one last quick question if you have one. Yes, Brett.
So we've been talking about what is the multiverse the entire time, but I got a different question. What is a world?
Why don't we head off to dinner now on that note? I haven't had a biology class. I can't. No, I'm sorry. I can't.
Do you have a book on that one?
I do not. If it could be answered with astrophysics, maybe. But I can say this. I am glad, having been married for 30 plus years, that God made men and women. It works really well. It's like he knew what he was doing. So, well, thanks again. We'll stop tomorrow. We'll talk about some other stuff. At least artificial intelligence will show up in there. So.